On the day of my release, as soon as I stepped out of the prison gate, someone knocked me unconscious with a club. When I woke up, I was locked in an arena cage, facing a large tiger. Eleanor was supposed to pick me up, but her close male friend stopped her. Ethan is out. What about the arena? He whispered, trying to coax her. I've been with you all these years. Just stay, and watch this one with me. She slapped him, but he smiled. Anger rose in his eyes, and the iron gate slowly opened. Julian seemed to have forgotten the slap, ingratiatingly putting his arm around Eleanor's waist. Darling, I bet hell die in this arena. Eleanor looked at the figure that so resembled me, her tone utterly certain. Hell die in the first round. Hearing's words, a chill ran through me, in her eyes. The person in the arena was perhaps just a weak scholar. By the time I came back to my senses, the large tiger was barely a foot away. I stumbled backward, wanting to scream for help, but found I couldn't make a sound, and my face was burning with pain. Before I could react, the tiger had already pinned me beneath it. Murmurs rose from the audience. Hey, this condemned prisoner isn't doing so well today. He's not going to die in the first round, is he? Viridia doesn't have the death penalty. Criminals who commit serious offenses are sent to the arena. If they survive, they return to prison for rehabilitation. If they die, they become lunch for the beasts. I chuckled self-deprecatingly. What a reward for my efforts. Just finished serving time for Eleanor, and now I am off to heaven. The large tiger's fangs drew closer and closer. As I was wondering how to escape death, a silver-bladed knife suddenly landed by my hand. Behind me, Julian's excited shouts rang out. Come on, buddy. I am rooting for you. Eleanor frowned dismissively, as if annoyed by Julian's meddling. He chuckled softly. I am not like you. You only care about Ethan's life. Without time for further thought, I grabbed the hilt and plunged the knife deep into the large tiger's abdomen. Warm blood splattered across my face. Enraged, it lunged and bit down. I dodged, but its sharp fangs still tore off my left sleeve. The scar on my left arm was exposed, catching Eleanor's attention. Ethan. Eleanor's eyes were filled with tension and panic, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop her. She stumbled and fell from the audience seats, running all the way to the arena cage. What are you standing there for? Open it. The staff were momentarily stunned by Eleanor's shouts. They quickly ordered men to restrain the large tiger and open the cage. The moment I saw Eleanor, tears slipped from the corners of my eyes. Just as I thought she would rush over and embrace me, her face suddenly darkened. Her eyes filled with rage. She then motioned for 4 staff members to restrain me. What disgusting thing are you? How dare you have a scar like Ethan's? While I was wondering why Eleanor didn't recognize me, she had already grabbed the knife, plunged it into my flesh, and fiercely twisted it against my bone. Do you know how Ethan's scar came to be? Eleanor's gaze was fixed on the scar, her voice heavy with sorrow. It was those good-for-nothings from the Eleanor family, afraid I'd take their property. They set fire to the small rental house, where my mother and I lived. My mother died horribly in the fire, and I was saved by Ethan. Holding the knife, she vengefully pulled it out of my flesh, then immediately plunged it back in, tearing at my flesh again. Her face was filled with affection, her tone soft. Ethan truly is a fool. His left arm was hit by a burning beam then. The fire scorched his skin, burning down to the bone, but he held onto me, refusing to let go. After speaking, she suddenly looked up, her eyes fixed on mine, filled with disgust. As the knife tip scraped back and forth across my arm, I won't allow you to defile him. I struggled and shook my head repeatedly, my face pleading. I wanted to tell her I was Ethan. Why couldn't she recognize me? Eleanor's heart, harder than stone, didn't waver. With a swing of the blade, excruciating pain shot through my left arm. A whole chunk of flesh was violently torn off, and blood gushed out. The audience below was terrified, their faces full of horror, while the bolder ones even raised their phone recording devices. Smash all their phones. Kick them all out, and ban them from the arena forever. After returning to her seat, Eleanor leaned against Julian, her body still trembling uncontrollably. Thank goodness he isn't Ethan. Suddenly, she broke free from Julian's embrace, her eyes filled with terror. No. I need to see Ethan. Julian's gaze darkened. He pulled Eleanor closer, trying to reassure her. Don't panic, didn't we specifically ask our old classmate, Warden, to look after Ethan? He was on the morning shift today, and will personally escort Ethan home after work. They are probably drinking, and catching up right now. Wouldn't it be a shame to interrupt them if you went to see Ethan? Hearing's words, Eleanor's worries instantly vanished, seeing her mood improve. Julian grumbled discontentedly, "You really care about Ethan? What could possibly happen to him? He's a grown man. I bet if I died someday, you wouldn't even bat an eye." Eleanor, in high spirits, chuckled and scratched Julian's chin. "Are you jealous? You're both very important to me. Then why did you marry him and not me? What about me isn't as good as Ethan? You even call his name when we're in bed." Eleanor feigned annoyance, but the sweetness in her eyes was unmistakable. "He treats me like a child he cherishes." "Can you treat me like a child you cherish?" Julian spoke playfully, but his eyes were filled with resentment. "Are you looking for a husband? Or a father?" I curled my lips into a self-mocking smile. When we first met, I thought about how I was 7 years older than her. She'd grown up without a father and endured cold stares amidst gossip. I felt deep sympathy for her, so I was incredibly kind and understanding towards her. Now that I think about it, perhaps Eleanor married me because I filled that void of paternal love in her life. When I came back to my senses, the piece of flesh Eleanor had cut from me was already in the large tiger's mouth. The wound on my left arm was still bleeding profusely. The blood pooling on the ground made the large tiger even more excited and ferocious. The moment the large tiger lunged, I gritted my teeth, ignored the pain in my arm, and leaped onto its back. Clutching the dagger, I plunged it deep into its right eye. As it thrashed its head wildly in pain, I seized the opportunity to land several more blows on its neck and between its ribs. The moment the large tiger collapsed, the audience erupted, cheers and screams intermingling. Only and Julian kept their lips tightly sealed, their expressions unreadable. I lay on the ground, gasping for breath, when I heard a familiar female voice, "Release the alpha wolf." At these words, the audience first gasped, then became excited. I knew her vengeful nature all too well. Given her unyielding temper, this public mistake and her moment of losing composure had already filled her with rage. My victory would only fuel her anger further. What heinous crime did this condemned prisoner commit? They are going all out. If the alpha wolf dies, he'll die an even worse death, because thousands of wolves will rush out to claim his life. Exciting, isn't it? He's going to die anyway. It's just a matter of how. Playing for such high stakes. Julian raised an eyebrow at Eleanor, his eyes gleaming with triumphant satisfaction. Eleanor snorted, crossing her arms, waiting to see me suffer. I had exhausted all my strength killing that large tiger, watching the North Wolf approaching me. I figured I was certainly going to die today. I only hoped Eleanor wouldn't regret this later. I propped myself up, watching the North Wolf charge at me. I gripped the knife and lunged at it too. I used all my strength to plunge the blade into the North Wolf's neck, but just as I was about to pull it out, all the strength suddenly drained from my body. It roared in pain, violently shaking its head and flinging me hard. My back slammed against the railing. Ah! Crack! My wail was accompanied by the sound of my spine breaking. Just as I was relieved that I could make a sound and call for help, Eleanor's words silenced me. "How disgusting. His voice is so similar to Ethan's too. Good thing his face isn't." My face was still burning, and only then did I realize that my face might have been tampered with while I was unconscious. Before I could fully process my thoughts, the North Wolf had rushed over and bitten off one of my legs. My left arm was gone, and now my right leg too. Just as I thought I was about to die, Eleanor raised her hand and called for staff to control the wolf. She looked at me, barely clinging to life, with disdain in her eyes. "He's trying so hard to get my attention with ulterior motives. How can I let him die so easily? Give him some medicine." With that, she picked up her bag and went to the restroom to reapply her makeup. While was away, Julian stopped the staff member, who was about to inject me with the medication, and came over to me with a cup of water. "Buddy, have some water to calm down." He flashed a smile of concern, but it didn't reach his eyes. The next second, he pinched my mouth shut and forcefully poured boiling hot water into me. Excruciating pain exploded in my mouth. The oral mucosa rapidly peeled away under the high temperature. I tried to spit it out, but he clamped his hand tightly over my mouth. He forced all the boiling water down my throat, watching my tormented state with a triumphant smirk. Then, he leaned close to my ear. "Ethan, why aren't you dead yet? If it weren't for you, this troublemaker, I'd be with Eleanor. What are you to her? I grew up with her, and I was the first man in her life. How dare you steal her from me? For the 5 years you were in prison, we were together day and night, she told me I was better than you in bed. But when I begged her for a child, she refused point blank, all because of you. Oh, and speaking of children, do you know what happened to your first child? His eyes were brimming with arrogant amusement. Of course I did it. How could I let that bastard child be born? Once he dead, Eleanor will marry me. Seeing me convulsing and disheveled, his smile grew even more audacious. He casually patted my face. No one can save you. Even though I used acid to disfigure your face, I was still afraid. She'd recognize you, so I specifically had someone bring you a prosthetic face mask. With that, Xuyan waved at me and returned to the VIP section. Without looking back, immediately after, staff members plunged a large gauge needle into my arm. A burning sensation instantly spread throughout my body, every muscle screaming in tension. The American wolf's fangs were inches away. I knew this fight was unwinnable. Rather than die a pathetic death, I'd die with dignity. I trembling grabbed the remaining syringe and plunged it violently into my arm. Xuyan laughed and applauded. Brave warrior. Eleanor merely curled her lips in a sneer of contempt. HMPH. Overestimating himself. This drug was developed by Ethan. I even specifically borrowed a few bottles from his laboratory and sold them abroad. Half a dose is enough to cause sudden death after the initial rush, let alone a whole dose. Yes, I knew. Not only would I die, but I would die a horrible death, my body rotting away. But so what? As long as I could leave a complete corpse, someone would surely avenge me, and someone would regret it for the rest of their lives. As boiling blood surged through my veins, and my muscles tightened to the point of tearing, I roared and lunged at the wolf. I flipped over, pinning it firmly beneath me. The blade, imbued with my desperation and ruthlessness, plunged into its massive body again and again. Even after it whimpered and drew its last breath, I continued the motion mechanically, until my body gave out, and I collapsed heavily to the ground, still clutching it. A sudden uproar erupted from the audience. I whirled around and realized the iron cage had been opened at some point. The wolf pack, sensing the alpha wolf scent, slowly poured into the cage like a black tide, following the scent of blood. One wave had not yet subsided when another began. The pain of broken ribs mixed with the taste of rust surged in my throat. Perhaps the drug's effects were wearing off. I felt a loss of strength. Just as I thought I would die among the wolf pack, they let out a howl and collectively collapsed to the ground. A gasp erupted from the audience, countless eyes wide with disbelief. Kill. A furious roar that seemed to pierce the sky rang out. A group of prisoners, wielding iron hooks torn from saws, sharpened wooden sticks, and butcher knives, scaled the wall and entered. The one-eyed man leading them swung a chain, smashing the railing, then kicked open the cage and came to my side. Seeing me in this ghastly state, Rook lowered his head and shed tears. Ethan, I am sorry we're late. Then, he wiped away his tears, and when he looked up, his eyes were full of murderous intent. Ethan, well, get revenge for you. I leaned weakly against the cage and smiled at him. When I first entered prison, Rook was the one who beat me the most severely, but he also became my closest friend later on. Warden outwardly gave me special privileges again and again, openly protecting me, as if no one was allowed to bully me. Yet, whenever I was brutally beaten, he turned a blind eye, allowing the blows to rain down on me. Over time, the other inmates all saw Warden's true intentions. He wasn't trying to protect me, he simply wanted me to make enemies in prison, ideally leading to my death there. They all felt it was unfair to me. I had already received the punishment of imprisonment, so why should I suffer such unwarranted retaliation? But they didn't know I was innocent in the first place. They also didn't know that this smiling assassin Warden was an old friend of Eleanor's close male friend. Every time Eleanor visited me in prison, her eyes were always red and swollen when she looked at me. I didn't want to make her sadder, so the words I was about to say were swallowed back down. I knew this had nothing to do with her. Xuyan had disliked me from the moment we started dating. I also knew he liked Eleanor, but I never imagined he would go this far. The arena was in chaos. The audience, terrified, was scattering in disarray. Eleanor clung tightly to the VIP section railing, trembling with anger at the chaos in the arena. She strained her voice, commanding the bodyguards, "Stop them." Her trembling fingers pointed wildly into the crowd, like a drowning person clutching at straws. Seeing that all the wolves had been killed, she stumbled and fell from the VIP section. Surrounded by a human wall of bodyguards, she approached me. "Who are you?" Her manicured nails dug into my shoulder. The scent of her perfume, mixed with the arena's blood, stung my nostrils. Seeing me frown, Rook slapped her hand away. Crazy woman, what do you think you're doing? I let out a sneer, then raised my bloody left hand, and tore off the prosthetic face mask. The air seemed to freeze. The smiling expression on my disfigured face looked even more unsettling. Eleanor's pupils constricted to pinpricks, and her body uncontrollably fell backward onto the ground. She forcefully kicked off her high heels, scrambled to her feet, stepped barefoot onto the wolf blood, and grabbed my collar. Impossible. Maya's drinking with Warden. She suddenly burst into hysterical laughter, tears splashing onto my chest. Fake. You just have the same scar as him, sound like him, look like him, but you're not Ethan at all, she continued muttering wildly, desperately trying to convince herself, until she glimpsed the mole under my eyelid. One day, she was nestled in my arms, her finger tracing my mole back and forth, playfully teasing me with a smile. Your mole is so unique, I bet there's not another one like it in the whole world. After saying that, she smiled sweetly at me. Even if one day I couldn't recognize you, I'd definitely recognize this mole. Now, she stretched out her finger, trembling violently in midair. As she touched the mole, her knees hit the floor with a heavy thud. Ethan! She frantically shuffled on her knees closer to me, her lips trembling uncontrollably. My broken leg was still bleeding profusely. She suddenly snapped back to reality, turned, and slapped a bodyguard hard across the face. Doctor! Get me a doctor! A group of doctors tremblingly bandaged my wounds, but my blood wouldn't stop flowing. The white gauze quickly turned into blood-soaked red cloth. Eleanor's tears streamed uncontrollably, like a faucet left running. Before, I would have felt deep sympathy, but now I only found it hypocritical. But I still had questions for her. I crooked my finger, signaling her to come closer. Eleanor, why? Why did you send me to prison? Hearing my voice, like gravel scraping, squeezed out from deep in my throat, her tears flowed even more fiercely. 5 years ago, Eleanor rushed into my laboratory, crying, Ethan, our company went bankrupt. And they found out we cooked the books. She was trembling then, clutching my sleeve, and crying in my arms. I knew how important this company was to her. She had seized it from the cutthroat and ruthless Eleanor family, and she had built it up by pulling countless all-nighters. I saw the bloodshot in her eyes, and my heart ached as if it were being torn apart. She was only 22, she should have been blooming in the sunlight, not wasting away in a dark prison cell. That night, after I had coaxed her to sleep, I took the accounting books and evidence to the police station to surrender, but I realized now it was all just a setup orchestrated by Eleanor and Julian. What did I truly mean to Eleanor? I pried Eleanor's fingers, which were clutching me tightly, and stared hard into her eyes, wanting an answer. Ethan, I was forced. How could I bear to send you to prison? On the day the company went bankrupt, I went through every contact in my phone, borrowed everything I could, mortgaged everything I could. But it still wasn't enough. Her nails dug deep into her palm, and her sobbing grew shrill. Operating an arena was our only lifeline. I knew you wouldn't agree, you hated this kind of business. How many illegally operated arenas have you reported over the years? But how could we make money without bending the rules? I was afraid you'd prioritize principles over family, so I resorted to this desperate measure. She was right, I would have put principles above family. Do you know why I hate arenas so much? Because both my parents died in one. I clenched my fists, the taste of blood spreading in my mouth. You were born into the cutthroat and ruthless Eleanor family, but what about me? The hypocrites of the Ethan family, so as not to offend their enemies, tricked my parents into an arena, where they were torn to shreds by starving wolves. Back then, I knelt in a pool of blood and swore that I would never trust anyone again in this life. Eleanor trembled, trying to take my hand, but I violently shook her off. Memories flooded back. It was her every expression that made me fall in love with this world again. Amidst my monotonous laboratory life, until I met you, I tore down all my defenses. I trusted you without reservation. I suddenly grabbed her shoulders, and tears dripped onto her collarbone. And what was the result? You and your close male friend sent me to prison. You put on quite a show, crying heartbrokenly in court. I thought you truly loved me. Ethan, I love you. I didn't want to. I didn't want to send you to prison. I am sorry. Ethan, I am so sorry. I truly made a mistake. She shook her head wildly, pulling me into a hug, but I violently pushed her to the ground. Ethan, even after you went to prison, I told Julian to have his old classmate look after you, to make sure you lived as normally as possible. I didn't want you to suffer more. Is that so? I forced a smile that was worse than a cry. Then, I violently tore open my clothes, revealing my chest and back covered in scars and bruises of all sizes. When I first entered prison, if they saw I wasn't fitting in, they'd burn my chest with cigarette butts, and beat me up together. I touched the several indented areas on my body. Several of my ribs were already broken, and over time, I learned how to fight. I curled my lips into a self-mocking smirk. Thanks to you sending me to prison, I developed the skill to fight. Otherwise, unarmed as I was, I probably wouldn't have survived the first round. In this arena, I am sorry. Your close male friend really did a number on me, orchestrating all this. My face is disfigured, and I've lost my arm and leg. My laugh was broken, drenched in pain. Eleanor's wails pierced the bloody air, her eyes so red they seemed to bleed. Realizing something, she abruptly turned her head, the veins bulging on her stiff neck throbbing violently. Not far away, Julian had been restrained by my brothers, pinned down amidst a pile of wolf corpses, yet a triumphant smile still hung on his blood-stained lips. Eleanor ran towards him, her feet stained with blood, even as sharp pebbles dug into her soles. She didn't flinch. You beast. She viciously stomped on his hand, then slammed her knee into his temple. Eleanor ordered the bodyguards to bring the hot coals. She then poured the entire basin of burning coals onto him. I screamed in agony. The smell of burning flesh assaulted my nostrils. Julian, you were the person I trusted most in my life. How could you do this to me? Julian's mouth was full of blood, his voice muffled and unclear. Eleanor, I love you. Before he could finish, Eleanor grabbed his neck, her nails digging into his skin. Tears splashed onto his contorted face. Love. You made me destroy the thing I loved most with my own hands. Is that your love? Eleanor shrieked wildly, blood tears slowly trickling from the corners of her eyes. Don't cry. Even with his eyes bulging from Eleanor's grip, Julian still tremblingly raised his blistered hand, attempting to wipe away her tears. But Eleanor forcefully slapped it away. Julian, you truly sicken me. Eleanor, her face full of revulsion, pushed him away, and stumbled through the bloody mess toward me. Eleanor, so Ethan was more important to you after all. Julian's breath was faint, his blood-tinged, broken words slowly carried away by the wind. What did it matter if I was more important? I looked at my battered self, and gave a self-deprecating smile. Just then, police sirens blared, cutting through the arena filled with blood and hatred. Suddenly, Rook's gaze seemed a bit evasive. I endured the pain of my wounds, and clapped him on the shoulder. What's wrong, you rascal? Ethan. We actually broke out of prison. I shook my head helplessly and waved my hand at him. Go quickly. I won't be in any danger here anymore. We'll meet again once you're out. He nodded. Those police officers. We called them. They'll protect you. I nodded gratefully at him, watching as he and his brothers departed. Soon after, a large number of police officers flooded the arena, quickly bringing the situation under control. Eleanor was still lost in her emotions, looking dazedly at everything before her. Several police officers quickly approached her. After pulling out their badges, they clicked handcuffs onto her slender wrists. The lead officer had a serious expression. Ms. Eleanor, we have sufficient evidence that you were involved in illegal operation, unlawful imprisonment, intentional injury, and other criminal activities. Please come with us to the police station for investigation. With that, the police tried to pull her up from the ground and lead her towards the police car. She seemed to come to her senses, pleading, Officer, could you wait a moment? I still want to say a few words to my husband. They exchanged glances, nodded, and then brought her back to my side. Ethan, I am sorry. I turned my face away, not wanting to look at her, and said coldly, Eleanor, let's get a divorce. No, Ethan. I won't agree to a divorce. She shrieked frantically. Then in the next second, as if a different person, she cautiously cupped my face. I am sorry, Ethan, I was wrong. Scold me, hit me, hate me, whatever you want, but don't abandon me. I beg you, she cried like a helpless child. This was the second time I had seen her so humble. The first time was when she was in the hospital corridor, clutching her phone and crying nonstop. Dad, please save Mom. She's dying. As soon as she spoke, the other end of the line hung up. She sat on the floor, crying heartbrokenly. I felt deep sympathy and used all my savings to pay for her mother's medical expenses. Suddenly, I felt Julian's words weren't wrong. Eleanor did treat me like a father. This time, I wouldn't soften. I used all my strength to push her away, and her eyes showed obvious panic. Eleanor, I don't want you anymore. At these words, Eleanor's eyes dimmed and unfocused. She slumped helplessly onto the floor, as if her soul had been drained. Seeing that we had nothing more to say, the police took her away directly. On the other side, Julian was also taken away by the police in a police car. He seemed to still be immersed in the cruel torment Eleanor had inflicted upon him. As the police car started, the shrill police sirens faded into the distance. After arriving at the hospital, doctors arranged facial reconstructive surgery for me, and fitted me with a prosthetic arm and prosthetic leg. I also developed an antidote for the stimulant drug they used on me. Although the prosthetics offered me the chance to live again, the foreign sensation and the difficult to adapt to pain made me lose 10 pounds in half a month. Just then, a soft knock came at the ward door, and my brother Rook arrived. He was out of prison. He carried a box of my favorite pastries, his face filled with worry and deep sympathy. "Ethan, how are you feeling?" He placed the pastries on the nearby table, and pulled a chair to sit by the bed. I managed to force a smile, still not quite used to it, but he'll get there. Rook was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Have you heard about Eleanor and Julian's fates? They've truly fallen this time. They got what they deserved. But there's something strange. Eleanor voluntarily reported over a dozen illegally operated arenas. This would normally be considered a major meritorious service, allowing her to apply for a sentence reduction, but she flat out refused. The internet is buzzing with discussions about this now," Rook said, pushing his phone towards me. "Has she gone mad? Who would refuse a chance for sentence reduction, and insist on spending life in prison? Maybe someone's manipulating her, trying to make her a scapegoat." All sorts of speculations flooded the screen, and many people stood up to defend Eleanor. I chuckled at these netizens, who were quick to judge without knowing the full story, but I couldn't blame them. Eleanor looked harmless, and was skilled at deception. After all, I had been married to her for so many years, and only now did I discover her violent, cruel, and heartless nature. But I knew Eleanor wanted to atone. Seeing my somewhat dazed expression, Rook took my hand, his face firm. "Ethan, let's not dwell on this anymore. You need to recover well and start a new life." Just then, my attending physician walked in, holding some examination reports. "Overall recovery is quite good. However, you'll need a series of rehabilitation exercises to help you better adapt to these prosthetics." I took a deep breath, thinking of the experiment that had been delayed for 5 years. How could I give up when the drug for treating neurological degeneration hadn't been successfully developed yet? I also didn't have time to keep dwelling in this pain. "Doctor, I'll cooperate actively. I want to get back on my feet as soon as possible and live like a normal person." From then on, I began strenuous rehabilitation training. Every attempt to move my prosthetic leg, every effort to pick up an item with my prosthetic arm, brought agonizing pain that made me want to give up. But thinking of the harm Eleanor and Julian had inflicted on me, I was unwilling to give up. I had to live well and see the fate of those evil people. Later, the media widely reported on this case. I also found a lot of evidence at home and voluntarily handed it over to the police, ensuring their vile deeds were exposed to the public. In court, Eleanor wept bitter tears, lamenting her remorse, but none of it could undo the mistakes she had made. Julian kept his head bowed, his eyes hollow, seemingly having accepted his fate. Eleanor was sentenced to life imprisonment, and Julian was sentenced to death. As for me, with daily diligent rehabilitation, I gradually adapted to my prosthetic arm and prosthetic leg. I walked out of the hospital, returning to the sunlight. 10 years later, my experiment succeeded. Watching the patients with neurological degeneration gradually recover, my heart was deeply moved. I stood on the podium, spotlights shining on me, holding the Galen trophy in my arms, to thunderous applause. The host asked me about my feelings at that moment. I want to thank the part of me that never gave up, the me who refused to be defeated in the arena, the me who, even as a disabled person, didn't give up on myself, and continued to contribute to society. On the night of the celebration gala, I also received a letter from prison. The familiar handwriting on the envelope told me it was Eleanor, even without seeing the signature. I tore the envelope into pieces and scattered them in the air. Watching the letter's contents scatter in the wind, my eyes became slightly moist. Fortunately, all the hardship is behind me now. "Ethan, how are you?" When night falls and all is quiet, lying on my cramped, cold bed, I always think of you. My mind is filled with the times we spent together. I regret so much, regretting sending you to prison, regretting not picking you up on the day you were released. If I had gone to pick you up that day, would things have turned out differently? Ethan, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong, and I know that nothing I say can make up for the harm I caused you, but I still wanted to write these words to you, to give myself a chance to atone, because I am afraid I won't have another chance to atone later. Now, I undergo rehabilitation every day, and I am learning new skills. In prison, IVE also actively proposed to the authorities to abolish the arena's condemned prisoner system. Actually, IVE secretly tried to kill myself several times, but IVE been stopped, because every time I think about what I did to you, I feel so guilty that I want to die. I know you might never forgive me, and I don't expect your forgiveness, but I can't accept you not wanting me anymore, even though you truly don't. But this time, I think I'll succeed in dying. Since I can't apologize to you in person, I only hope that after I die, I can protect you from heaven. I wish you all the best in a life without me. May you be successful and happy, and never again meet someone as awful as me. Eleanor. 5 days after receiving the letter, Rook ran to tell me Eleanor had committed suicide in prison. I walked aimlessly, unconsciously. I found myself at the beach. Eleanor and I used to love coming to when we were dating. For some reason, my prosthetic limb kept chafing my skin today, even drawing blood. I didn't dare walk any further, so I sat down, leaning against the beach, and looked up at the blue sky. Many clouds drifted by, including Eleanor's favorite dog-shaped cloud. I curled my lips, staring at the dog-shaped cloud. Eleanor, I don't need your protection. 5 more years passed, and Viridia abolished the condemned prisoner arena system. All arenas ceased to exist.